on. Maybe you, actually.
Right, okay. UPin. Hello, UK Crime Book Club. Oh, my word, we are 48 minutes late, but we are here. We have done it. I can see my screen strobing. I don't care. Hi, Andy. Oh, tell me you can hear me, Andy, because I can't hear you. Kaz, I can't hear Andy.
I'm back. Hi, Andy.
Hello, I can hear and see you, but I can only hear.
You can't hear Sam?
I can hear her, I can't see her.
Okay, Sam.
Oh, she's talking now, I can't hear her now.
Fair enough. Sam's pinning the stream. This is 48 minutes late and an absolute nightmare to get you here.
Pinning the stream, poor girl.
Well, it's been horrendous getting you in. Do you want to start off by introducing yourself?
My coffee's gone cold now. Would I like to start off doing what? Sorry.
My drink's all gone as well. Do you want to start off by introducing yourself, telling everyone about yourself and your books?
Okay. Hello, UK Crime Book Club. Long time no see. My name's Andrew Barrett. I'm a CSI working for West Yorkshire Police, and I've been writing novels since, well, I've been writing Eddie Collins and Roger Coniston novels since '96. So that's quite a long time, isn't it? But there was a bit of a gap in between where I did other things. But yes, so I'm responsible for producing this latest book of The Crew, featuring Eddie Collins. And I write CSI type of stuff with lots of swearing in it. So thanks.
Yeah, we got quite a bit of swearing, didn't we, while we were trying to go live?
Yeah.
So you are here as our Ask the Expert because you are a... Do you want to tell us what job you do?
Yeah, I'm a crime scene investigator, which is a CSI. We used to be called SOCO, but about 4 years ago they changed that, not because it's to do with anything American and we're copying Americans. There was a change in the legislation whereby we could seize and search, or search and seize rather, but in order for us to be able to do that we had to have the word investigator in our title for some reason, so they called us crime scene investigator.
Oh, there's a question already on the stream, but I'm going to start off by asking you the ones that I got before we went live.
All right.
So Meg Jolly, she's published her first crime novel recently. She lives in Bradford.
Oh, hello.
She has got lots of questions for you. She wants to know what texture is. She wants to know what texture is print powder and does it smell?
Firstly, I don't have a sense of smell anymore. I lost it about 3 years ago. Don't know why. Don't care, really. I have a young puppy, and you can imagine what that's like. It doesn't bother me. I'm not bothered with dead bodies anymore. Lovely, bring it on. So I don't now know what powder smells like, but I remember telling people years ago that aluminium powder smells like wax. We use that. That's a general powder. It's good for most surfaces. It hates wet. Forget anything that's wet. It will not play with anything that's wet or greasy. Anything that's got a large amount of contaminant on board, aluminium powder won't play with. We use a white globular powder which has a feel like corn flour in your fingers. You know, that sort of squeaky feeling. It's like,
yeah.
And we have that's good for very slightly textured surfaces, laminate floors. This would affect door, UPVC door kind of thing. And we also have a black globular powder as well, and that's like soot. It just goes everywhere. It's horrible to use. We use that on silver cars, basically. Try not to use it indoors on people's houses because it honestly just flies everywhere. They're the main three powders that we use. We have magnetic powders. That's good for paper and for polystyrene. Black and silver powders. They are. There's also there's a vast array of erotic ones. Red Wop, that's a particular favourite of mine. I've never used it, but it sounds great. Red Wop. I don't know what it does. What else was it?
She also says, what does your CSI suit feel like?
it's a curious mix between paper and plastic. It's waterproof, so it's like a flexible plastic on the outside and a sort of fibrousy type paper on the inside. And it sounds like a packet of crisps while you're walking along. They come with hoods, and when you've got the hoods up, all you can hear is crinkling. So most people these days use them with the hood down and just use a hairnet to stop any hair falling out. They get very hot and very sweaty very quickly. So imagine what it's like for a full shift inside a scene suit in summer. It's not very pleasant. And then you've got the overshoes as well, so you don't get a lot of air to your body. It's very hot and pleasant.
She also says, what does death smell like?
Again, at the moment, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but I remember describing it to somebody a few years ago. It smells like goldfish that needed changing about 4 weeks ago. You know, that sort of smell that goes straight to the back of your throat, and it stays there, and that's what it smells like. Also, if you're doing postmortems and you are in the middle of a postmortem, it smells remarkably like a butcher's shop. Sorry, but it does. You are, after all, made up of a load of meat, so why wouldn't it smell like a butcher's shop? Obviously, you get bodies that have been there for some time between you and I smell disgusting. There's no getting away from it. But the best way around that is don't use Vic under your nose or what Vicks or whatever people profess to use. Just go in, take a breath, take a deep breath, and take another deep breath, and you'll get used to it, and you don't even smell it after a while.
So, Sam says, tell us about the Eddie Collins Starter Library we can get set by signing up to your website, and she's put the link on.
Oh, bless, that's very kind of her. I'm just trying to see if I actually have any of those books available to show you. I don't think I do. No, you get the first book in the Eddie Collins series, which is called The Third Rule. That's a stonkingly large book. If you've got plenty of time to read and you don't mind getting immersed in a long story, it's not a quick story by any means. There's lots of characters, lots of threads to run through. A good story. I like it. I enjoyed writing it. I really enjoyed writing it. And for a quick fix, you get the Lift as well, which is a very short story. It's told in first person from Eddie Collins' point of view as he gets inside a lift in a block of flats to go up to a job on the whatever floor it is. And he meets two characters in this lift when he wishes he hadn't have done. I won't give any more away than that. But yes, sign up, get the 2 free books, see what you think too.
Right. Joe Singleton says, how do you see the future for CSIs? Is there anything new that's going to make a massive difference?
We're already seeing lots of differences. Technology from on the front line of CSI work is immense. We've got tablets now, which are sensational pieces of equipment. We can send our fingerprints and our footwear to the relevant bureau over in Wakefield, and they can get an ident from a fingerprint now before I finish typing, which is fantastic. All our exhibits that we collect throughout our examination, we've got a Bluetooth printer in the cab now. We can just print the labels off to stick on the bags. Really good, really good. It takes a lot of learning, and when it messes up, it plays with your head big time. Trust me, I know. I've launched my tablet across my van many times, but that side of things is phenomenal. It's really good. We're going through a bit of a change at the moment with ISO 17020, which is a massive headache for us all. But it's what the government wants. So I think what that's aimed at doing is standardising scene examination across the country, so that when it gets to court, you can take for granted that what we've found has been found legitimately and has been processed accordingly. So the ISO aspect of our crime scene investigation, take that to one side, and you've got the core technology that we use: powders, brushes, cameras. It's all the same. It's been for years. I can't see that chip.
Fair enough. Now, I'm gonna, before we go on to the other questions off the stream, I was telling my students at school, I'm a science teacher, that I was talking to you tonight, and they have questions.
All right, okay.
That I promised I'd ask.
I'll do my best.
They're pretty good, actually. So the first one is, what kind of evidence would you collect at a hit and run?
Right. Well, if you've got two scenes immediately, you've got a car and you've got an injured person or a dead person, whichever it turns out to be, on the road. From the car, you get the injured or dead person's hair, blood, clothing fibres, possibly fingerprints, although very, very doubtful. From the impact site, you've got paint from the car, physical fit of any broken indicator lenses, things like that. So you've got plenty to play with. You can be there for some time collecting all that.
Nice. And the other question that they had for you is chloroform traceable?
Is it whatable?
Is chloroform traceable?
No idea.
I don't know if I should be worried about what they're planning.
I know. I will Google it quickly if I were you. Sorry, can't do that. I'll be honest up front. If I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know.
No, it's the best way.
No.
Yeah. Oh my God, Sam says I'm a genius. I don't know why.
I wish I could see her. She makes me laugh.
She's tormenting me by opening drinks, like off screen, because I only bought one up. She says, have or will Eddie Collins and Roger Coniston ever cross paths in a book?
Yes, they have. I think it was Sword of Damocles, because Roger went to examine a burglary scene at the main character's house, and some pertinent piece of evidence came to light, and Eddie, who went back to examine the scene again for a different reason, wanted to know what he found. So he rang Roger. And also, again in that book, Eddie did something a bit naughty, and I don't want to spoil it for you. Eddie did something naughty and got in touch with Roger to go and finish the job off. That's all I can say on that, because I don't want to spoil it for you. But yes, they have met. I don't anticipate them meeting again. I think once is enough.
And once might be enough for Roger as well. With Eddie.
Yeah.
So Charlotte McFall, before we went live, asked, police believe a murder committed in a house. Police believe a murder is committed in a house with no blood. What do you look for to prove the police theory? And how do you go about collecting and tagging the evidence you find?
Massive question. That is that Sam going, oh?
Yeah. Did you hear it?
At least I hope. I didn't catch that. Say that again.
She said that's an excellent question, Charlotte.
Oh, it's a massive question. And it doesn't start off with CSI at all, in my opinion. It starts off with intelligence. I don't have any of that either. But it starts off with CID and intelligence and working out who this person is, who his associates are, what kind of circles does he mix in? Is it organised crime? Is it just plain drugs? Is it firearms, weapons, that kind of thing? And whatever theory they can come up with, it's our job then to try to prove or disprove it, to sort of push the investigation along to its natural conclusion, whatever that might be. We don't know what it is until we start finding the evidence. But you've got normal evidence that you will look for. You've got your footwear, you've got your fingerprints, you've got blood, you've got signs of struggle, you've got blood spatter, all that kind of stuff. If you haven't got a body, you've got to try and work out where he is to begin with, haven't you? And that's down to intelligence, I think.
So part of her question was if there was no blood. So if there was no visible blood, like no blood spatter and things, what would you do to look for traces of blood?
All right. Well, there's different light sources we can use. We typically use something called crime light now. It's a trademark for a really high intensity light source. In the old days, we used to use a big generator with a big, like a shower cord, a big flexi cord, and a light source at the end. And you used to drag this around the house, and it was massive. And it was cumbersome. Now we use something. It's just a torch, and it's set at a specific frequency, and we have to wear goggles to protect our eyes from this. And black windows out and warn people, please don't come in, otherwise it will blind you. And we'll look for anything that fluoresces, and blood will fluoresce. So yeah, we use a crime light.
So in your Eddie Collins book, I think it was, no, it might have been Roger Coniston when I read it. There was, in one of them, there's this really clever thing where it gets footprints from a floor using a lifting technique that involves... Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I thought that was really clever. I went away and Googled it to see if it was like a real thing.
Oh, you're talking about the ESLA device?
Yeah.
There's two ways of lifting footwear marks in dust from a floor. It works best on like a laminate floor or a tiled floor. And basically it's a sheet of black mylar that's foil on one side and jet black on the other. You put that on the floor, you put an earthing plate next to it, and then you put an electrical device across the two, and then you charge it, and you put a current through this mylar plate, this mylar film, and it attracts dust to the black side underneath from the floor. So you turn the equipment off, get rid of your earth plate, spin it over, shine a light obliquely across it, and you should be able to see any footwear marks that are on there. Of course, it's a negative, it's an inverse, but you should be able to get the footwear marks from the bit of floor you've been looking at. And another one, a favourite of mine, is use your oblique light directly on the tiled floor, so it skims right across the surface, it picks out hairs and crumbs and all kinds of crap that's on your floor. But there you'll be able to see footwear marks in dust as well, hopefully. And then you lay a sheet of black gelatin across it and pull the gelatin sheet off, and there again should be a footwear mark underneath. I love doing that. I love footwear marks. It's a favourite.
Yeah, I got that. There's, I think the newest one in the crew, he talks about loving footwear marks.
I do like
it. Yeah. Joe says, if you were able to, would you like to write full time, or do you enjoy your job?
Yes.
Is that a thing that you can answer like on screen?
In fact, yes. In fact, yes. I absolutely love the core element of my job, and that's going to a crime scene and working it out in my head to try to figure out what's happened and to get as much evidence from it as I can within the constraints of time, of whatever else it is placed against us. But I would love to carry that to my desk on a full-time basis and just write, and I would absolutely love to do that. My writing is interrupted by my everyday work. I work 7 days on, 3 off, 7 days on, 4 off, and half the week is split into early shifts starting at 7, and the second half of the week shifts are split into lates. So I'll finish at 11 o'clock at night, or every 3 weeks that late shift is dedicated to nights, or it's dedicated to half nights. And so you can imagine that's 50 odd hours a week, and it takes its toll. And you get to day 7, well, me anyway, I'm certainly flagging on day 7 when you finish at 2 o'clock in the morning. Whatever. So yeah, I would absolutely adore to just do it on here. It would. There's nothing like writing, Caroline. Writing is absolutely gorgeous. I love writing.
I'm very impressed with anyone who can write well.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Just do say that again.
I said I'm very impressed with anybody who can write.
Anybody can write. Anybody can write, and anybody should write. And for 1% of all those people who think, I'll give it a try, it will bite them, and it will bite them hard, and they will continue writing, and they will grow. They'll write longer pieces, more complex pieces, but either way, it will grab them, and they'll love doing it. There's nothing like it. It's a real buzz. My wife loves roller coasters, and she gets a real thrill from roller coasters. I get a real thrill from writing. I realise how pathetic that sounds, but it's true. I get a real buzz from it.
So Joe Singleton, he's got all the good questions today, is Joe Singleton. He says, how do you decide to draw the line on what you can describe in the book and what would be classified as confidential tricks of the trade?
Right, well, I use open source. If there's anything that I can find on Google, it's fair game. I can use it. If not, I have an option of making something up that I made up. If you read the third rule, MLPD, do you remember MLPD? Spraying that on a window to bring the fingerprints up? I made that up. It's multi-layer protein dye, and I made it up. And nobody's ever said, that doesn't exist, does it? Nobody's ever said that. However, about 5 years after I wrote that book, they've developed something that is very similar to multi-layer protein dye, believe it or not, but it's horrendously messy. It's a squirty bottle that you spray everywhere, horrible stuff, and it didn't take off. So yeah, I use open source stuff, so I can't get told off by my bosses. So you can't give away these secrets. If there's anything secretive, I won't use it, because let's face it, you don't want to turn anybody into a victim of crime because of what you've written. So I do stay away from stuff like that.
And you did have to like inform them, didn't you? Because you write crime and work with the police. Yeah.
I have to declare that I've got a business interest, and they'll go through it to make sure that I don't. I'm not derogatory towards anybody on Facebook, social media, or anything like that. I've also got to be careful about what I write about. I can't write about victims or specific crimes. And I have to stick to that, because if they catch me out doing anything wrong and they say you can't do it anymore, then I have to make a choice. And that's a choice I don't want to make. So yeah, I'm a good boy.
Well, at least that's what you tell people. Sam says she thinks any story you've heard 3 times from 3 different places is fair game.
She says what? Any story I've heard from 3?
She says anything you've heard 3 times from 3 different places is probably fair game.
What, for me to write?
Yeah, or just to use. Like any fact that you've heard like that. Although I wouldn't trust it, because teachers have the worst
exactly
opinion towards copyright.
If my gaffers dragged me into the office, how would I prove where that came from? Unless it's on Google open source, then I'd be all right. No, I daren't take any risks with it.
That's a good question. When you've been in a scene and used all the chemicals, etc., do you have a cleanup team when the investigation is all over?
Yeah. For normal volume crime, we call burglaries and some robberies volume crime. Not that they're not important, it's just that they're not major crime, and you have to give them a category, volume crime. So the answer to that is no. When I complete my job at a burglary scene, I'll tell the complainant how to get the powders back off again. Sometimes people forget. Sometimes CSIs forget to tell people how to get the powder off, and it never gets removed, because if they do it wrong, it tends to stick. As far as the major crime stuff is concerned, when we leave a house and it's in a right state, yes, there is a professional cleanup crew. It's one that you have to pay for. I don't know if the police pay for it, or whether the complainant or the estate of the complainant pays for it. I don't know. It's not something I get involved in. We try not to make too much mess. We try not to destroy people's property, because it's not fair, is it? But we do have a job to do. So if it means making a mess, we make a mess.
Well, if it means you're doing your job well as well, I don't think people would really mind.
Yeah. No. I mean, there are some things. If I go to a burglary scene and I found glove marks, for example, and I'm faced with the choice of examining or not examining an antique piece of furniture with aluminium powder that they're not going to get back off again, I'd give them that option. Do you want me to examine it or not? And 9 times out of 10, it's don't bother.
Right. Sam says, a line from your reviews says, as real as it gets without getting blood on your hands. How do you get that balance between reality and entertainment right?
That's a good question, that. And I try not to make it appear like a documentary or a manual on how to do a job. People aren't interested that you spend an hour at a burglary and then another hour and a half writing about the burglary, all your exhibits, all your photographs, what you did, why you did it. Nobody's interested in that when they're reading fiction. They want to disappear into an exciting world, an alternative world to their own. And who can blame them? So they don't want to read about what powder you select and why. they're quite happy that you use aluminium powder, or they're quite happy that you found X amount of footprints and they're all Adidas or Nike or whatever. They don't need to know the fine detail. That's for us, and it'd be very boring to read about on a fictional basis. So I keep that out. You only need to know the fundamentals, and you only need to know the pertinent parts to move the story along, like you would do in a proper investigation. So that's what I try to stick to. People don't need to know the everything, all the report writing malarkey that goes on, and the conversations you might have with police about the crime scene. You just don't. It doesn't carry the story forward, so why use it? You only bore people.
Fair enough. Sam also asked, sorry, I have to keep going back and forth on the thing. What's the most unusual case you've heard of that was solved by forensics?
Oh, that's a shocking question.
Blame Samantha. She's sat there tormenting. Yeah, she's tormenting us with drinks that we don't have. Asking you horrible questions.
I can't bring one to mind. I've been to so many. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm not bragging or anything. I'm trying to illustrate what a shocking memory I've got. I've dealt with literally hundreds of bodies, dozens of murders, some horrible assaults on people, and I can't honestly sit here and say, oh yeah, I remember this case where forensics did this for an investigation, because it happens a lot. One case I can remember, funnily enough, is back in the late 90s, early 2000s, a murder of a woman in Leeds. And I'm just debating whether I can actually tell you. Can you hear me? Because it's blood. Yeah, I'm going to shy away from I don't know what to tell you about that. But yes, there are dozens of cases. Obviously, it's a forensics department. And you're going to discover things that you need to give to the investigation and carry it forward. And we win a lot. We win an awful lot. I think out of the country, that there's 43 forces in England and Wales, and I think we're second to the Met in West Yorkshire. So we're a very good forensic department.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell you earlier when you were talking about when you started writing that 1996 was when I was still at college.
Really? Do you know something? I take bobbies out in my van sometimes who weren't even born when I started this job, and I look at that. That's frightening for me. It really is. No, I can't believe I've been doing this for 25 years, honestly.
It's horrifying, isn't it? I work with people and they're like, I was at school in this time, and I'm like, I got married then. Like, just no. Joe says, as a CSI, is your promotion ladder similar to the police structure?
The two disparate departments, they're completely different. We have vehicle examiners who just do vehicles and nothing else. We have CSIs who examine volume crime scenes and vehicles and nothing else. And then we have senior CSIs who examine all crime types. That's myself. And then we have supervisors who that's an awful job. That's an office job, who look after us all. And then we have the area forensic manager. So you've got five ranks, if you like. Initially, when I first started, we had SOCOs and the supervisor, and then you'd have the one chap over at Bishop Garth who oversaw everything, and that was it. So they're split us down into different categories now for different category of jobs. Whereas your police officers, they start at a constable, don't then go to sergeant, inspector, chief inspector, and so on. So yeah, they're two completely separate things. Yeah. I
have no idea what my dad has written on this thing. Something about a case in Leeds, butcher case in Leeds, he says.
Sorry, a what?
My dad said something like butcher case in Leeds. I don't know what that is about.
No, I don't either.
No idea what he's talking about. This is a regular occurrence with him, though. It's getting old. He's going to kill me when I see him. Joe says, are there any funny, strange stories you can tell us about that have happened when you were doing the job? Tell us your funny job stories.
All right. One of the first ones I can remember, this is one that your dad likes, is I was only 2 or 3 years in service working in Halifax, and they used to have a tiny little mortuary there. And it really was like somebody's front room. It was a ceramic table they had. A pottery table, that's like a large pot table with a body on it. And it was cut open. We're doing the big. And back in those days, we had the big medium format film cameras, the same type that the wedding photographer used to use, with the bellows on it, where the lens goes in and out, and you're looking down to see across. Well, I had to get a shot from above looking down onto the body using this medium format camera with a big handheld flash as well. So I climbed up the ladders, and they can see me. I'm ready to put my foot on this ceramic table where the body is, so I can stride over it and take the shot down. And everybody says, Andy, don't do that. But they told me too late. I did it. The table moved, and I slipped and went straight in the body. They never said anything, didn't the body, because it was completely dead. But that was one of the first times I got covered in blood for no good reason. And then another job where I worked in Halifax was I'd gone right down to Todmorden with an attachment who was with me, a police attachment, to a burglary in a house, and we knocked on the door, which was slightly ajar anyway, and I was a little bit strange when that happened. No reply. And I thought, what do we do? I'm starting to panic because I know this is an elderly complainant. So we open the door, there's nobody inside. And I'm going, hello, police. And we're going to the lounge, there's nobody there. Up to the first floor, nobody there. Up to the attic room, nobody there. I was thinking, oh my God, what's happening here? Come back downstairs again, let ourselves back out to find out we'd been in the wrong house anyway. Don't know whose house it was. We just legged it.
Oh dear. Tony Millington said, is the correct title in the UK CSI or SACO? Need to know for writing my books.
Certainly in West Yorkshire with CSI now. People still call us SOCO, and it's fine. It doesn't matter to any of us what they call us, really. I don't know about other parts of the country. I suspect it's CSI probably nationwide now, because we all fall into that legislation I was telling you about. So it used to be SOCO up until about 4 or 5 years ago. Then we officially changed to CSI, but we still respond to SOCO as fine.
I think Tony, if I remember rightly, is based in Peterborough. So that's
I would have thought CSI.
East Anglia, isn't it?
I would have thought CSI.
Apparently the case that he was on about, my dad, is someone who murdered his girlfriend, and some blood residue was found on the guy's hair bracelet. All
right, yeah, sorry, don't know about it still. I probably do, but I've just forgotten about it.
Well, we asked, we got an explanation.
I did tell you, aluminium powder does make your memory suffer. Honestly, it really does, and I'm proof of that.
Memory, does it affect your ability to use technology as well?
Yes, it does to a great extent. As the 3/4 of an hour spent getting on here will tell you.
Sam says, are there any books or TV shows that you think get things spot on?
I've heard that Happy Valley does. I've only watched one episode. I enjoyed it, but I've just not got around to watching any more. That was there was a guy called Bob Bridgestock who was the advisor on that, and he used to be an SIO over at West Yorkshire Police. Worked with him a time or two. Very good. So watch Happy Valley. We
actually have Bob Bridgestock and Carol, because him and his wife write as a team, don't they? They're they're on this. I want to say the 7th of April. I'm not exactly sure, but very soon.
Oh, good. Well, say hello from me. I'll watch it anyway. Say hello from me.
I will say hello from you, because you did work with him, didn't you, at times? Have you?
Yeah.
So on that, apart from things getting spot on, does anyone ever ask you for advice? Because you're a friendly guy and lots of other authors. Have anyone ever contacted you and said, "I'm writing this bit, can you help me out?"
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lots of times it happens weekly. Good friend of mine, who is now a very good friend of mine, Michael Wood. He writes to me occasionally. We swap ideas. There's I don't want to name them all, but there's a dozen authors. There's a new one just emailed me last week. Andrew Lowe, I think his name is. He's asking for advice. Yeah, I don't mind. It's good. I like building relationships with people. Anyway, it's good.
Sam says it's the 8th of April that the bridge talks are on.
All right, I'll try and watch that if I
can. I'm going to go back and just check that I've got all of the questions from people. What can you tell us? No, you've already told us about the crew. Sam says, tell us about the new clothes for the books.
Yeah, there's the Eddie Collins series is it's got some tremendous reviews. It's got some really good reviews, but I don't like the covers. They're the covers that I made, and I don't like them. I did at the time, but when you see them compared to other books in the same genre, they're just amateurish and they're rubbish. So I'm saving up now to get new clothes for all the books. And I'm thinking, I've just got, you might be able to just see it on my screen behind you, books 1 to 3 of the Eddie Collins series in a box set. Get that while you can, because in a few months' time, the book 1 in there, the third rule, will not be an Eddie Collins book. I'm taking that out because the rest of the books, Black by Rose, Sword of Damocles, Leadstone Look, The Death of Jessica Ripley, and This Side of Death, they're all sort of good crime thrillers. Whereas the first one in the series, The Third Rule, that is a good crime thriller, but it's intertwined with a bit of political shenanigans, isn't it? If you've read that, you'll know that. And so I find that people who read The Third Rule aren't into politics, and they assume that the rest of the books are of the same ilk and don't bother going on with them. Or they're a crime thriller fan who starts to read The Third Rule and discovers it's got a political slant to it. So they then don't pursue either that book or the series. So it's time to pull that book out and slot another one in its place. So that's the one I'm writing at the moment, a new book number 1 in that particular series. That's a world exclusive, folks. So if you want to get The Third Rule with Eddie in it, then you need to act fairly fast. Well, within the next few months.
How difficult a decision has it been to change that book?
Just say the first part of your question again.
How difficult a decision has it been to change?
Massive. Because I wrote that book I started writing The Third Rule in 2004. And then in about 2006, I broke off to write scripts with a friend of mine. And then I went back to The Third Rule in about 2010. And when I finished it, it was 280,000 words long. And an average book is about 80,000. So I made the decision to chop it into 3 segments because it's a big book. So I made the decision to chop it into 3 segments and flog that on Amazon. And it did quite well, but people didn't like the fact that it was in 3 segments. They thought I was trying to screw money out of them, which wasn't the case at all. So then I brought it back into 1 book and sold it like that. But then people were complaining, quite rightly, I suppose, that it was too long. And then I got taken on by Bloodhound Books. You remember that? And they said, can you rework it? Can you get it down a little bit? So I got it down to 160,000 words. I binned a full book, if you like, more than a full book, which is acceptable now. It's about the same length as Stealing Elgar and No More Tears, so I think that's about all right. And that does okay as a full book. People like it. They're not really mentioning the length anymore, so it's about probably on the top end of what's acceptable, but they do seem to like it. But I've known since 2004 that it was going to be a standalone book with Eddie Collins. But I liked writing Eddie Collins. And so I continued with the next book, Black by Rose, and Sword of Damocles, and I used him. And it wasn't until later on that I thought, I've made a real mistake here, because that first book should have just been a standalone and left alone. And then I should have continued with a new character, but I didn't. And people like Eddie Collins, so I'm not going to leave him in the third rule and rewrite the rest of the books. I'm just going to get rid of the third rule. Under a different character's. I'll bring it back as that book, but under a different character's name, I think.
Yeah, Eddie is brilliant. One of my favourite characters, though, is his dad.
Oh, Charles, yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever write sort of either an early days of Eddie or something like a standalone about Charles?
I don't think I'd write a standalone about Charles, simply because he's only, I hate to say the word good, but he's only good to read as a character when Eddie's barreling insults at him and his comebacks can be quite good. As a character, he works great with Eddie, but I think by himself, I think he might be a little bit lame. So, no, I don't think so. I was thinking about doing a standalone from D.I. Benson's point of view. I think we spoke about this before, you and I, didn't we?
Yeah.
Where Benson was telling Charles, who is Eddie's dad, Benson was telling Charles how they met and what had happened in the intervening years before Charles came back into Eddie's life. But the only way to do that really is to kill Eddie, so that conversation could exist. And I don't think Big would be too happy with me if I killed Eddie off just yet, anyway.
No, you're not allowed to kill Eddie off.
I might try and work a way around it, see what I can come up with.
Oh, hang on. Joe says, what happens when an investigation goes wrong for whatever reason? Is there ever any big internal investigations for falsifying evidence, for example?
I've never heard of one of falsifying evidence. I think to falsify evidence, you must have a personal investment in the crime or the victim or whatever. And to us, to me certainly, it's a job. And I feel sorry for the victims, but that's as far as it goes. I do my job legitimately. There's no questions I'm doing anything illegal. Not for anybody. So I haven't heard of that. It probably does happen, but I haven't heard of it. I've never been called to court for questioning about anything like that. As far as investigations are concerned, I think for major investigations, for major crime, for murders and large stranger rapes, things like that, then it's routine for an investigation upon completion to be investigated themselves to get best practice to improve the way we do things. So I think that's a regular occurrence.
Do you get called to court often to give evidence?
Luckily, no. I think I've been called about 3 times, and I hate it. I really detest it. It's awful. But the thing I find distasteful about the UK judiciary is that they will call people in a blanket fashion. If you had anything to do with a case, they call you. And so they might call me to court to ask if I've taken this series of photographs showing somebody's facial injury after an assault. I write a statement that says, I am me, and I took these photographs on such and such a day. Why does this not suffice? You've got to disrupt my shift. You've got to, you're therefore stopping victims of crime getting a service from me. You're causing my colleagues to have to work harder to try to get that victim a service. It's just ridiculous, the stuff that the courts can get away with. And that's not just me it happens to. It happens to all police officers as well. And it's just preposterous to me that they can waste so much time and money on ridiculous questions.
Sam asked as well, when you started writing and were a new SOCO CSI, how did you manage to do both?
It was easy because I loved writing. Because prior to writing crime, I wrote 2 or 3 horror books. They were all rubbish, but I enjoyed it, so it didn't matter to me. I was back then. There was no Amazon. There was no indie author. There was none of that. You either did it the traditional route or you paid Vanity Press to do it for you. But there was no Amazon, so I did it because I loved it. I really did. I tried the traditional route, I'll be honest with you, but I always got a knockback. but it didn't stop me writing because I loved it. I loved my job as well, with a passion. So none of them felt like work. I was enjoying my home life writing, and I was enjoying my work life too. So it wasn't difficult at all. I wasn't very good at either, but I tried, and I eventually got reasonable at both.
I think you're better than reasonable.
Oh, bless you. That's another 10 round.
When we can all meet in the after times, you owe me and Sam a drink.
You're on. Double water all round.
Pardon?
Double water all round.
She says, she's holding up her hands like this. I think she's saying that we've got 10 minutes.
All right.
No?
Or 10 seconds.
Or that you owe us 10 drinks.
Oh,
But, yeah.
bottles of water, please.
Now I'm getting a thumbs up. She says, have there been any changes to your job due to the current situation we find ourselves in?
Yes, there are a few colleagues who are severely vulnerable who can't go in. I don't know what they're doing, but they'll have been given a laptop and some mundane work to do, no doubt, to work from home. Every job that we go into, we have to wear gloves and a mask as routine. Obviously, we try to social distance with any victims of crime as well if we can, and officers at the scene too. So yeah, we have to keep our distance, but we have a job to do. We can't shy away from it. If people are suffering from COVID themselves, then we have extra measures, different masks and an apron to put on too. But we have to still do the job.
Do you so teachers, again, because you don't really get a choice, you still have to go in and work, have to test twice weekly for COVID? Do you have to do that? No.
We distance at work as well. We've knocked out every other computer, so we keep away from everybody. We've got to wear masks in the station as well. So we try our best to be good about it all.
Yeah. Sam says, what are the biggest mistakes made in crime fiction, in your opinion?
There are a lot from memory, and I only say that because I don't tend to watch too much crime fiction. But the biggest one that really boils me is taking the suspect back into the scene of a crime to interview them. And I just don't understand why anybody would think that's a brilliant idea, when quite clearly any evidence that might make him a suspect has just been negated by taking him there. So that just, as soon as I come across that in a book or on a film, shut it off. I can't watch that. I can't believe that. There's that, and there are other things too. I think we talked about one or two specifics last time that we were having a chat about, which I won't go into here, but that's the worst one. And then, and another one is you've got your CSIs or your SOCOs busy doing their work, photographing and fingerprinting. Whether there would be or not is a different matter. And then you've got CID walking through in their suits, and you just think, why? Why would you do that? That's laziness. If you see that on TV, folks, turn it off.
Sam's asked me a question now, and I'm not sure what the answer is going to be when I ask it. But when do you get your best ideas?
Oh, in the shower. Usually in the shower. I'm not renowned for having short showers, because I will stand there under the water spray, drinking my coffee, because I always take a coffee in with me, and I will just stand there and think. And it's true. And I was in the shower when, I can tell you this, there's a twist in Let's Look right at the very end, and I was in the shower when that came to me, and I was staggered by it so much that I almost fell out of the shower. That is true.
What I like is
a lot of people don't get that twist because they're not paying attention, and I'm not going to spell it out for them. You've got it, Caroline. I know you've got it. What
I like is that Sam and me both did exactly the same reaction when you said you took a coffee in the shower. Why would you do that?
I take a coffee with me everywhere. Seriously, I'm never without a coffee. If I'm without a coffee, I'm bereft and I'm grieving. But I take a coffee in the shower. I put it on the shelf. It sometimes gets a little bit damp, but hey, no. I always take a coffee in with me. When I get up in the morning, coffee. Last thing when I go to sleep at night, coffee.
Yeah, no, I'm with
Coffee
you
all day.
on the coffee everywhere thing, but just not in the shower. No.
Try it, it's lovely.
Joe says, do you get updated from your bosses on cases that you've been dealing with, such as successful prosecutions?
Sometimes if it's a large case that's attracted a lot of the media attention, we'll get, we have HMET in West Yorkshire, which is the Homicide and Major Inquiry Team. They have a single contact, a single point of contact. And you'll generally get an email that goes out to everybody saying such and such got so many years, or the judge congratulates your supervisor. That's about it. Sometimes you get, as you're passing somebody in CID in the corridor, oh, Andy, do you remember that? And you'll go, yeah. And they go, oh, yeah, you went down for that. And yeah, it's nice to find out that your work's contributed to dare I say it without it sounding cliche, contributed to justice for somebody.
Have you ever worked on any ones that have made kind of major news? You ever worked on any cases that have been in? Yeah. You can't tell us, but yeah.
Yes, I have.
And Sam says, how many soccos would usually be at a scene?
Are we talking major crime here, or just a volume burglary, or what we're talking? If it's volume burglary, you'll go by yourself.
She's doing that.
If it's a car, there'll be one of you. If it's a major car, I love doing murder cars, rape cars, kidnapping cars, and I'll be there by myself all day because I enjoy that kind of thing. Firearms cars as well. If it's a murder scene, depending what kind of a murder it is, you might have somebody working upstairs, somebody downstairs, somebody doing footwear, somebody doing fingerprinting. You know, it depends how you want to divvy it up. There's lots of different ways to do it. So there could be. I've known scenes where there's 7 or 8 of us working in a house together, all doing different things at the same time. But quite often there's just you and a supervisor, or 2 people and a supervisor.
What do you mean by a murder car? Like a car that like a body's been in?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or a car that has been driven by a murderer. So yeah, there's connotations left, right, and centre for cars like that. You're trying to find blood on pedals, door handles, fingerprints on door handles, secret compartments, blood. I found, after 4 hours of searching a car for blood, I found a full stop sized piece of blood on a boot seal of a red Escort years ago, and that nailed somebody, so I'm quite pleased by that. That was the victim's blood.
Wow. Joan wants to know what your training process is like. Do you get regular on-the-job training for all the new procedures?
Yeah. We are assessed yearly on all our competencies, from fingerprinting to footwear casts, all that stuff, DNA recovery. All our reports are assessed and dip sampled on a weekly basis to make sure that we're doing everything correctly and by our standard operating procedures. We are very thoroughly looked at. The only thing they don't do at the moment is pin a camera to our chest as we're doing the exam. Otherwise, everything is looked at. And it has to be, because if we go to court and they're taking for granted that everything that the evidence being presented to them has been recovered in a proper fashion, then we have to do it right. Otherwise, it all falls to pieces.
So tell us a bit, because I think that was one of the questions before we went live, was about DNA recovery. Tell us a little bit about how you go about recovering DNA.
Well, DNA comes in many forms: cigarette ends, chewing gum, blood, saliva, bodily fluids. I'll leave that to your imagination. Hair. You recover hair into we used to call them beechams. They're frowned upon us, put them into plastic pots because they tend to stick to the sides and you can't get them out again. So I always wrap them in some sterile paper, and then they go into a tamper-proof evidence bag. Blood is swabbed after being tested with a Castlemayer kit first, a reagent, just to make sure it is blood. Then that goes into the swab tube, into another bag, sealed. What else is a chewing gum? That goes into a universal container, a sterile one. You can get DNA now, contact DNA, using tape it. The tiny little pieces of tape, sterile, made just for us. And you tape it over the surface of whatever it is you're after. And hopefully it picks up offenders' DNA. What else did I say? Cigarette ends into a universal, into a tamper-evident bag. So there's lots of ways to do it. Depends what you've got.
So apart from footwear, what's your favourite type of evidence to look at?
I'm quite partial to firearms jobs. I quite like those. Yeah, I love searching for stuff. I'll search for hours looking for things. I'm rubbish at finding stuff in the drawers at home. My wife will say it's in the third drawer down. Say I can't see it, and she'll come and point to it. There, look. I'm useless at that. But if I have to look for a bullet, I'll be there all day and I won't find it. Well, hopefully. Sometimes I don't, I admit. But, like the blood thing in the car, I'll look all day until I find some. If I don't find something, I get quite depressed by it. But I suppose that's just to manage. It's good that people do that anyway, I think. I'm in the right kind of job if I get annoyed at myself for not finding something.
How much of you is there in Eddie?
That's a question I get asked an awful lot. And I suppose really there's probably an awful lot of me in him. I get as angry as he does, and I get as shouty and as sweary as he does, but I'm better at controlling myself. I don't get violent, whereas he does. I have some rip-roaring arguments with people, and he does too. So I suppose we're quite similar in that respect. And we've both got the same drive to make sure that I do hate it how it sounds cliche, but honestly, it's true. We do have that drive to try and get the victim justice if we can. And I promise you that is true, and it's true amongst all my colleagues as well. It's a given. It's that.
I liked Sam was laughing because we both know how much you were like tearing your hair out and getting angry at all your devices as we were trying to get you to go live.
You can imagine what it's like when we get an update for our tablets at work. Why? It doesn't work. You get very cross very easily.
I was amazed when you said about Bluetooth printers and stuff that you got them all working.
Yeah, we've got that. Yeah, that is the only bit of kit I've ever had that's hooked up straight away, being gone. I have a Bluetooth keyboard as well, and that is the only piece of kit along with the printer that's hooked up. Prior to this tablet, we had an older tablet, and it would never work. The amount of times I've put my fist through the keyboard, you wouldn't believe it. I hated that thing. But anyway, we're on to better things now, fortunately.
We've got 3 minutes left. Remind everyone about your books.
Okay, I write 2 series at the moment. I've written a trilogy with Roger Coniston. He was the first Socko I did when I first started in '96. And yes, you want to see the book, don't you?
Yeah.
There's the very first one. That's called A Long Time Dead. The very first one. I wrote that in '97. It's been changed a dozen times since then, and it's all right now. Then the next one is Stealing Elgar, which is actually this trilogy. I really enjoyed writing that book. It's really good. I enjoyed it. I know a lot of people like that too, luckily. The last one in that trilogy is No More Tears. That also is quite good.
Would you write more, Roger?
No. I've been asked to several times, but that's like from a previous generation. It's proper old school. In that one, he attends a murder where he fingerprints a door frame using black powder and then photographs the fingerprints that he finds. We've evolved since then in crime scene investigation. We'll probably use aluminium powder on that door frame because we're not going to photograph it. We're not going to photograph it. We're going to lift it with lifting tape, rubber lifting tape. And now we've evolved even more. We would probably use aluminium powder again, but this time we're going to photograph it again. So we've gone sort of full circle, but we're photographing it with a decent digital camera with some good lighting. And we do that because that fingerprint, get it shipped over to the bureau in a few minutes, and hopefully if it's a suspect's mark, they can have a name for the investigation team. So things have come full circle again, and I'm not sure I want to go back to writing lifting fingerprints and stuff. You know, we still have to lift fingerprints occasionally if it's a round cylindrical surface, sphere, you know, or it's a colourful background where the camera can't pick out the fingerprint. Still have to lift that and then photograph the fingerprint. But yeah, things have changed, and I'm not sure I'd like to go back to writing about Roger and stuff. The only standalone book I've ever written to press is this one. This is The End of Lies, and that's a sweary, gruesome book, but it's good. I loved writing that book. And a lot of people liked reading it as well, and it's the only one of mine that's available in audio. A lovely lady called Colleen narrated that. She did a sterling job. Otherwise, it's just been the Eddie Collins book, which is the Third Rule, Black by Rose, Sword of Damocles, there's Black by Rose, This Side of Death. That's the latest one. That's where we find out something about Eddie that staggered a lot of people who read it. And I'm looking forward to reading the 7th one, which will be the conclusion to what we found out in that book. So yeah, I'm really thrilled about the future, about what's coming next.
Brilliant. Thank you for sticking with us.
Pleasure.
And
It's
giving
been a
it
pleasure.
whole hour, even though it took us nearly 2.
2 hours to do. Yeah. Like one of my jobs. I did 2 hours, it only took me an hour.
But it's been brilliant, and there's lots of people coming online on the side saying that they've really enjoyed the interview.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's great. I'm glad people have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed being here too. There's some things you don't want to talk about, and some things you can't talk about, and some things I can't remember anyway. So, well, apart from that, we did all right, didn't we?
We did all right, yeah. And we'll invite you back, but next time we're buying you a webcam.
Oh, bless you. Go on, chip in. Everybody chip in 10p. Give me a webcam.